and leads several thousand foreign fighters from more than 70 countries in their assault on Iraq's Shiite-dominated government. What do these dramatic developments mean for an already volatile Middle East and the wider world?
The question the country has to think through is whether it's possible to effectively create an alternative government in Iraq without the acquiescence of Iran and, the person who is really the key stakeholder now, I would say, who's the head of the Quds Force, Qasem Soleimani. Is it possible to think about pulling this country back together without Iran on that shit? And my answer would be no. That if you want to go it without Iran, you'll effectively cement the partition of Iraq without any hope worse of having a formula for over time pulling it back together.
You cannot make decisions regarding the two holiest places in Shia Islam by excluding the Iranians. You cannot make decisions regarding a country that's on their border by excluding Iran. Even though Iran is in every piece of U.S. policy, whether it be the nuclear issues, support to terrorism, energy security, economic issues, it's all out there. They have morphed from what we would call a terrorist group maybe as recently as 3 or 4 months ago into actually I would consider to be a terrorist army. So it's a problem like we haven't seen, quite frankly, since the towers went down in 9/11. I would offer this too, is that with this morphing, they also have demonstrated an extraordinary understanding of the use of propaganda in the modern world. They've done things with Twitter, with the internet, with all sorts of modern IT communication, which extends their ability to create fear and intimidation in ways that no other terrorist group, I think, has applied so far. I think they're way ahead of Al-Qaeda. But of course, the question remains, how do you stop ISIL, since they're the ones that are actually generating this chaos and this crisis? This is my view. I would offer to you that ISIL is an evil force, and I would offer to you they can only be stopped by force. And I don't think they have any interest in negotiating in any way that makes sense to us in the 21st century. It's an extension of what we've seen in the post-9/11 environment.
Is it possible to do effective targeting? And the answer for the moment, I think, is no, but will soon be sort of. And so I think one reason that we're sending these additional advisors is to have people on the ground who can get the kind of information that's only available when you're there. It has been reported that we have so-called ISR surveillance resources in the air over the key parts of Iraq now, and so that tells you that given the extraordinary capabilities the U.S. has, better information is on the way. So if I was an ISIS cadre, I would not be sleeping well.
What accounts for the appeal of ISIS? If you're a Sunni in Iraq, it's pretty clear. Revenge against a Shia government that's alienated you, brought violence to your family. A lot of reasons. If you may be a purist and you believe in what ISIS says about reestablishing the Sunni Islamic Caliphate, of bringing religion and the practice of Islam back to the time of the ancestors, the Salafs, then that's appealing to you. If you are a Sunni from other parts of the world, then you're a sectarian. It's the battle against the Shia. In a previous project, I was in Peshawar, Pakistan. I interviewed a leading journalist who said, don't forget what Zarqawi, remember the initial originator of this group, said when bin Laden and Zawahiri, al-Qaeda core leadership, wrote to him and said, stop killing Shia, stop beheading Americans, it's not good for public relations, et cetera, et cetera. And he returned a message saying, anti-Americanism is learned behavior, anti-Shiism is innate. If you're a foreign fighter, it's adventure, it's a legitimate jihad in the eyes of many people, it gives you purpose. If you're a sectarian, again, opportunity, also to return home with credibility in a place where you may have been marginalized in every way, and to bring violence back home.
One of the great counterterrorism tools that the United States can bring to the table around the world is jobs. Yeah. I have a very strong belief that jobs And the things that we have done here in our own country make a significant difference, because I've talked to young men, if they had a job and they had a sense they could support their family, raise their children, and actually make something of their lives, it becomes more difficult for them to sit there and listen over a period of 3 or 4 nights in a row to a recruiter for Al-Qaeda or now ISIL.
Yeah.
Our security response cannot be only with the central government at this time because of the complexity of what has happened in Iraq.
As the immediate crisis ebbs, because right now we've got a 3-alarm fire to put out, but as it ebbs, to lead a process drawing in the key regional powers, balancing Saudi Arabia and Iran finally, so that this insane Sunni-Shia fratricide will have an end point. Bringing in the permanent 5 members of the UN Security Council, all of whom have an interest in stopping this process of disintegration, and taking the lead in thinking, what's this part of the world going to look like under some new structure?
Without a political settlement or a progress on the political settlement, an attack alone can, on the ISIS can, there are going to be all kinds of complications that David talked about knowing where they are or how mixed they are with others, how urgent where the target is that must be dealt with. But I believe that an airstrike alone can degrade the threat, but will not fundamentally change the situation. Kind of a marriage of diplomacy to get the political situation right, as the ambassador said, to get the people on your side to be able to win against the extremists and terrorists, and then to apply the military measure. But we all know, at least my judgment is, absent that, you would have perhaps de jure, if not de facto, division and instability for some time to come. Once you get into the programmatic of what it is that you're going to do, assuming a post-assessment, and the assessment comes with, here is a kind of the military capability that exists that we could invest in and build up and provide them this capability. I'm putting on the table that assessment should include what are the local forces and elements that need to be taken into account, because in the first instance, if they switch from ISIS and work against ISIS, assuming the other things are in place, which is a big assumption, you would need people on the ground, because I agree with David that the central forces going back and taking all these places may be difficult. David has put some other option on the table, but putting that aside for the moment, one of the
have apparently started an operation, though, to prevent the terrorists from leaving the area. RT's Roman Kostarev has the details.
According to a source in the Russian Defense Ministry, ISIL fighters are now fleeing the besieged city of Raqqa towards Palmyra, and they're using the corridors that were granted to them by the Kurdish Syrian Defense Forces. Now, according to a source in the Russian Defense Ministry, Russia opposes any gathering of forces outside of the city, and any terrorists that flee Raqqa will be destroyed. According to a source, once again, already 120 ISIL fighters have been killed, those who are trying to escape from Raqqa. And reportedly, all Russian military forces in Syria are now in full combat alert. Now, that means that unmanned aerial vehicles will be on duty 24 hours a day. Now, Russian Special Operation Forces are reportedly taking part in the operation as well, and those, as we know, are tasked with identifying terrorist locations, their headquarters, and that information is in turn given to Russian warplanes who strike terrorist targets. Now, the city of Palmyra